All right, everybody, greetings, good afternoon, or good whatever time of the day that you're watching this, either live or on replay or both. First of all, hello. My name is Ara. Second, my last name is not with a guest. That just happens to be my name, Ara, and I happen to have a guest today. But thanks for spending your valuable time with me here on the live stream. And first of all, a little preview. This coming Tuesday, February 23rd at 8:30 p.m. I have another live stream with another guest, trustee sidekick, who's kind of an artist assistant, all around great guy, and he claims he knows the secret history of peanut butter. We'll see. But so that's coming up this Tuesday evening, another live stream. So yeah, again, thanks for joining. Hi, Trevor. I see you there. Let's see. I figured out how to. Hello. Thanks for videographer, co-worker of mine. So anyway, thanks for joining me. So I have a very special guest today. His name is Dave Swartz. He has currently he's a creator. He currently has an Indiegogo project called Confederate Monster, which he'll talk about. I happen to know him from the alternative book Feast or Famine. Right here, which is a great mini series, by the way. So definitely check that out. I don't want to get a strike from the YouTube police, so I'll just say Feast or Famine. But there we go. So that's how I know Dave. But before I get to Dave, if you have a birthday or an anniversary or some kind of milestone today, happy birthday and congratulations to you. So without further ado, because I'm not really sure what ado is. The creator, all-around good guy, creator of Feast or Famine. His name is Dave Swartz. Dave, how are you?
Hey, all right. Good to be here. Glad to join you on this Saturday afternoon. I think this is the first day stream I've done in a while. So.
Oh, cool. Oh, all right. Well, thank you. Hey, Kayla, how's it going? Another fellow friend here that I know from live streaming.
Nice.
Dave Swartz, why don't we start off so my fans here won't have to hear me babble on and on forever, which is many reasons why I like having guests. So I obviously, like I said, I'm familiar with you from the Feast or Famine series through Alternative. And I'm sure you probably been asked this question 1,000 times, but give us a little bit of like the Dave Swartz origin story.
Sure, absolutely. So I started my career off not in comic books, but actually in marketing. So I was a creative director at a marketing company, primarily working for automotive dealerships for about 5 years. And that was the very first job I got. Well, I worked up into the company, but that was the first company that I worked for when I got out of college. So I had a really good job. I had a really good living, really, everything that I think most artists would want, especially since the term artists kind of sends a lot of fear through parents, what kind of job are you going to be able to find? So, for me, it was a really great opportunity and I loved it for, a couple of years that I was there. However, it just wasn't for me. It wasn't a good fit long term. So I just kind of was more interested in drawing and illustrating again. I was doing a lot of graphic design at the time. And I just did some doodling. And one of my coworkers had just, asked me, hey, have you ever thought about doing a Comic-Con? Have you ever had a table at a Comic-Con convention before? And the thought had never crossed my mind. So I thought, hey, let's put together a quick story and, put together a table display for this comic book convention and see how well it does. And, about 8 years later now, I'm here after publishing 3 books and, going on to my next one here. So.
Nice. So when you work on each book, what parts of the book do you do?
So I do it all. I have the ability to do every part of the process, and I have done every part of the process. When I did Atlas, my first self-published book, I did everything with the exception of the letters. The letters were done by Ed Brisson, who is actually a pretty well-known writer for Marvel now. And then my current work, Confederate Monster, that is all me. So I'm doing the writing, the drawing, the coloring, the lettering, even the graphic design. So.
Yeah, cool. So, yeah, so what's the process in trying to find somebody for anybody who's watching this now or later on, as far as trying to find other people to help you? Is there what's the general process? I guess in case someday, in case I happen to put a conflict together, kind of my own thoughts, like what's the process of finding
Sure.
other people to help you out?
I mean, honestly, for me, a lot of the people that I've collaborated with, I've actually met on social media. So I'm part of a lot of Facebook groups. I'm a lot of Twitter, networks, direct message groups, where we just sort of chat. And if there's a job that comes down the line, it usually gets posted. So I find that stuff happens all the time, where I look at my social media feeds and I just see someone just a writer who's looking for an artist, or an artist who just wants to work on a book. But to me, that's the best way nowadays to be able to try to connect with people. However, before we did COVID, or we had COVID, I met a lot of people at comic book conventions. There's a lot of networking opportunities that I was able to take advantage of, just because I happened to get seated next to a pretty awesome creator. Actually, when I first met Joseph Cooper, the artist on Feast or Famine, I met him at my very first comic book convention, and I just happened to get sat right next to him. So I, chatted him up for 3 days, and he and I became pretty good friends, and the rest is essentially history.
Nice. So, I do videos, so I'm writing a short story now that I'm gonna eventually, I think when COVID is finally gone, or safe enough where we can get together a little bit, make it into a short film. But I'm always interested in the creative process, which is why I got into video, because I was going to go to Hollywood. But enough about me. As far as your process of getting a story or getting the artwork, like do you have like a favorite point where you like to start? Like, do you come up with the story first? Do you come up with like a general plot? Do you come up with characters first? Like what hits you usually first?
Yeah, typically it's the pitch, which is pretty far down the line for, I think, a lot of people. But I tend to kind of really have a really cohesive idea when it hits me. A lot of times it kind of is just this what if type situation, where you say, well, what if this is combined with that, or what happens if you put this character in that world. So I try to kind of start with the overall kind of buzzword ideas, and then I try to take that and combine it with a story that's relatable on a human level. So if it's a really cool concept, it can go pretty far, but it's not really, I think, going to do as well as something that has a lot of emotional, human kind of story behind it. So I like to start there. Because I am an artist after all, and I'm really educated more as an artist rather than a writer. But I personally like to spend a lot more time in the writing phase before I even put pencil to paper. I feel like sometimes if I jump too far into the drawing or the artistry first, I don't have as strong of a foundation in my mind of what the universe looks like. I really feel like I need to spend a lot of time just writing, even if it's just writing out character biographies or descriptions of how characters relate to one another or relate to their environment. All of that information really helps to create the visual, kind of aspect of it within my brain. So I actually tend to prefer to start with the writing and get a lot of that fleshed out before I even begin the drawing.
Oh, cool. We have a question from Kayla. Just wondering about all your work projects. Do you have a particular character that you personally relate to or see in yourself?
Wow, that's a good question, Kayla. Thank you. So, I've been talking a lot about Frankenstein recently because of my book. I've always loved Frankenstein ever since I was a little kid. I think there's just something about the idea of, transcending death and kind of reanimating of life. So there's something about that character that I really enjoy, the whole kind of play of life and death. Personally, I feel like the character that I relate most to is the character that I created. Atlas, the very first superhero story that I made back in 2015. I self-published that one. He's basically a metaphysical superhero. So I came up with that idea. I spent many years of my early mid-20s researching philosophy, the universe, alternate realities, different theories of just everything in general. So I took a lot of that information and I distilled it down into this superhero idea where he would basically be a combination of Doctor Strange and Shazam. But it's very much kind of inspired by ancient cultures and Eastern philosophies and that kind of thing. So I would say I personally relate more to that character because I feel like that character is very much me, or at least how I saw myself at the time. So yeah, for sure, Atlas.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you have a new Indiegogo campaign that's been around for about a week and a half or so called Confederate Monster. Why don't we? I will do a screen sharing thing here. Let's. So it's. Why don't I? Do you mind if I play the video? Is that?
Yeah. It's it may be a little loud, so just maybe turn the volume down a little bit. But yeah, go ahead.
All righty. We hopefully. Let's see. We can.
Can you hear it?
Oh, hold on.
I had the same problem on my stream. I just did it at my first live stream like a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, actually, I tested this earlier. Oh, wait, hold on. I tested this earlier, and I knew I was going to do that. And I'd remind myself to do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, take two. But even I always say even Steven Spielberg makes mistakes. So if I click on the share audio line, we will actually be able to share audio. So hopefully we can see this.
There we go. You can hear it now.
Yeah. Where's my wife? Do you hear me? Dismount and walk forward.
Darling, you're home.
And waiting for you with loving arms.
Must you maul her like an animal, Daniel?
Calm yourself, Mrs. Stevenson. I'm just getting into character.
They both insisted upon hiring Daniel's patients to cater. I too thought it would look as unseemly as it does.
Is that all you discovered while befriending Mrs. Schmidt, my dear?
Dr. Schmidt fits the description of our target in nearly every way.
All right, very cool. Very cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, so I was saying hey, Trustee Sidekick is here. So you Trustee Sidekick. So I was saying to you in the green room before we went on that I love one of the, besides of obviously being familiar with your work before, I love history and I love the whole, I got into like Frankenstein through the Universal monster movies through my dad first, and then got into the whole thing, the novels that way through the movies. But I thought, and I just putting the two together, like that's a great idea. So so what was, I think you've probably answered part of this question before, but how did you think of that idea?
Yeah, so I think I kind of after I did Atlas, I was trying to challenge myself as a writer. I wanted to see, if I could go beyond the superhero genre, and just, try my hand at a couple of different genres. So I decided I wanted to write a sci-fi pitch. I wanted to write a horror pitch. I wanted to write a fantasy pitch. And I did that. So I put together these ideas. I put together, 8-page little story previews for them. And I sent them all out together at the same time. And the one that wound up getting picked up was the sci-fi pitch, Feast or Famine. So I just decided I was going to roll with that for, however long I needed to finish the book. It wound up being, I think, 2.5 years or so. But the horror pitch that I originally had was Confederate Monster. And I pitched that story, probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. So it's been kind of sitting on my shelf all this time. And I, hadn't really thought much about it. But the other day I was thinking, hey, it would be a really cool idea to, dive back into the story and see what else I could do with it. So I, kind of expanded the original concept that I had, because, I was kind of I wanted to play around with Frankenstein when I thought about horror. I really have loved that character ever since I got into Universal Monsters as a kid. So I started kind of with Frankenstein as my horror character. I knew I kind of wanted to play around with that set of characters. But then I got thinking, well, I don't want to just retell the same type of story. That's kind of the one thing that I realized in doing research for this book, because I've watched nearly every Frankenstein movie I think I can get my hands on. So I wanted to watch them all just to try to inspire myself, but also to make sure I wasn't repeating anything that had been done before, especially anything that had been done fairly recently, i.e. the Victor Frankenstein movie with Daniel Radcliffe and I can't remember the other guy's name, but that I recently just watched, and there's some parallels to the relationships between Igor and Frankenstein, but essentially it's the same story. It's just sort of the same kind of like, oh, he's going to reanimate this body, like everybody kind of expects it. But I wanted to tell a story that was different. I wanted to focus on a different character. I wanted to focus on Igor, because I really felt like that character, there's a lot of meat left on the bone and left unexplored, that we could, play around with. So I wanted to kind of go with that. And then I got thinking about time periods, when to set it in, because I could go ultra modern with it. I could go into the original kind of time period. And then, I thought of the typical, well, I could set it in Vietnam or World War II, or, around one of those war type, times. And then that got me thinking. I was like, oh, well, the Civil War really hasn't been played around with very much. Especially when it comes to Frankenstein. So I thought, hey, let's play around with that. And then I for whatever reason, I just got this idea in my head of a cowboy Frankenstein, and it just sort of clicked. And I was like, okay, this is beautiful. I can really work with this pairing. They kind of really work well together. So yeah, that's kind of what led me to the ultimate idea.
Cool. Yeah, actually, I just thought of an idea question for, but Kayla kind of has a similar question, so I'll leave it to her. So she's interested in the script writing process, like what kind of structure is used, or does Dave do his own thing? So
yeah, so I think I kind of do my own thing a little. I've seen a bunch of different scripts out there, but because typically the film scripts that I've seen are a lot more, they kind of set like the scene and then they kind of go from there. Mine, I typically spell it out a lot more specifically. So, I take it page by page and panel by panel. And my overall page in my script has a kind of a description of what the scene is. But then the panels themselves, since I'm primarily the one that's going to be drawing the panels later, I tend to just give myself a really quick kind of note. So I'm not trying to be super specific. I think when I'm writing for an artist, like when I wrote Feast or Famine for Joe, I wanted to make sure that I wrote as much detail in there as possible, so he kind of had a vision of what was going on in my brain. But since I'm the writer and the artist, I think I have a fairly good idea of what is going on in my brain most of the time. So I tend to just write a quick note for myself as far as what's going on in the panel. But then the dialogue, the dialogue I think is pretty typical of most scripts, both movie scripts and comic book scripts. With mine though, I will say my script writing process, I tend to write it out more of a longhand form, like novel form first, in more of like a very just, like I was just describing, very note like taking. It's not meant to be formal or anything. It's more or less I'm just trying to regurgitate it as fast as I can. But then I take that and I adapt it to more of a formal script form. And in that process, that's where I get to figure out, okay, how am I going to tell this part of the story in X amount of pages and make sure that everything flows nicely and has good pacing. So it's a particular, I think, skill in script writing in trying to understand, how to pace the scenes correctly, how to give it enough time to make sure everything is, working well. But it's a similar type thing for writing scripts in movies and for comics. I think they're almost identical in the way that you treat them.
Cool. Yeah, I think I've asked this question before as a guest in other live streams, but I know within the, like, writing a film script or a TV script is the whole ratio of like 1 page per minute, 1 minute of screen time. Is there something, I think I've asked this question before, but I don't think I understood the answer. So I was wondering, is there a similar ratio to like a comic book issue?
I mean, I think it can vary a heck of a lot more in comics. I wouldn't say that is as true in comics. I don't think you could say, like this one script page is equal to X amount of number of pages, within, a comic book. But I would definitely say that the number of panels is a major kind of concern when you're writing. So like when I go through, like I just said, and I translate my chicken scratch into more of a formal script, I have to make sure that I'm not trying to cram too much into 1 page. I think oftentimes a writer, tries to do that, where they're just trying to get as much as they can into this 1 page so that we have, maybe more of a clean break into the next scene, so that when we turn the page, we can, make a clean kind of transition. And sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes you maybe just need to break it up and put an extra page in there, so that 1 page doesn't look like it's too confusing. The scene doesn't feel like it's too rushed, things like that. So I don't think it's necessarily more of a time issue when it comes to comics and scripts. I think it's more or less a pacing issue with, trying to cram too much into 1 page.
Yeah, I think, thank you for that answer. I think Trusty says kind of similar. It's great when an writer isn't also an artist. He's worked with a couple of writers who wanted an impossible amount of action in 1 panel. So,
yeah, I mean, like the old adage, a picture tells 1,000 words. So you need to really make sure you're utilizing every inch of that page to your advantage to make sure the story is being supported by that artwork. A lot of times I think Trusty's right. Artists tend to, try to smash too much into a page just to make it look, awesome. Right. But you can make a page look awesome and do it very simply too. And actually that's kind of my philosophy when it comes to art, or at least the art that I make. I love to see all of the detail and the rendering that a lot of other artists put into their work. But for me, I honestly like to just do things as simply as I can. I would love to, maybe give it a little bit of extra detail here and there when I have the time. But honestly, like I love the pace of being able to get 1 page done a day. A lot of people that I talk to, there's a varying range of how long it takes an artist to get 1 page done. But for me, with my process, I've been doing this for, what did I say, like almost 8 years now. So for me, I can literally start from a chicken scratch layout, which is essentially just scribbles on a page. I can start with that layout at the beginning of my day. And by the end of a day, I can have all the drawing done, all the coloring done, all the lettering done. And there's not too many artists that can say that. But it's only because I have a simpler art style. I have a process that I've created for myself so that I know I can get that done in a day. For me, it's better because I can get the projects done faster. I can get them into the hands of my fans faster. And I think overall, it just makes the whole process better. I know it sucks being a fan when you give money to a crowdfunder, or you give money into a comic book series, and it takes, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12 months to get it in your hand, So I want to make sure that I do the best quality storytelling I can, but as simply and as quickly as I possibly can.
Nice. Yeah, Trevor, my friend Trevor has a question. Do you create all your art digitally, or do you do it old school, pencil and paper?
I do both, but I will say that I primarily work digitally, especially for my sequential pages. I work digitally almost exclusively. The only time nowadays that I would do more traditional stuff is if I'm doing a commission, or if I'm just doing, regular sketching. One of the things, though, I have been thinking about is I've been finishing up this illustration that's going to be the grand prize for my art contest that I'm running for the campaign. And if you guys are interested in the art contest, or if you want to enter, check out the details in my updates for the campaign. So you just go to my Indiegogo campaign for Confederate Monster. And in the update section, there's a whole post about the art contest with all the information. But I'm the grand prize for that art contest is an illustration that I'm going to print onto a piece of aged paper. So it's going to be a digital print. But what I was thinking about doing, we'll see if I've got time. I want to take that digital print and I want to print it out onto a nice piece of Bristol, and I want to actually ink it myself with traditional tools. And then I'm going to put that up as one of a higher tier on the campaign, so you can actually, buy the original, version of that I'm going to hand ink.
Nice. All right. Well,
It takes forever, but I'll do it.
Yeah. Let me. So I noticed. Let's see. Do the screen sharing thing. So you have. Let's see. You have. As of recently, you're about 2/3 of the way there, towards your fixed goal, and you're about, I guess, about a third of the way through your days. The days, so that's awesome. Glad to see. So Confederate Monster, for all you're watching, please go to Indiegogo. Dave Swartz, Confederate Monster. So I know I was asking you this before, as far as when you've hit the first 30 days, do you want to go into some more days? Do you want to do in demand? Like what's the next step for you?
Yeah, my plan right now is I want to go into in demand for a little while. I did that for Feast or Famine last time, and that seemed to work pretty well. So yeah, my plan is to definitely go into in demand. But we gotta reach that goal first. So
yeah,
we got a little bit more of that hill to climb, but we got plenty of time. I do have some ideas for some stretch goals. I don't have them listed on the campaign yet. I didn't want to reveal too much out the gate, but I'm thinking probably in the next couple of days, early next week, I want to start announcing some ideas that I have for stretch goals, putting them on the campaign, just so people get an idea of what to shoot for, to try to get this campaign to reach another level. So
cool. Yeah. So and then let's see what other. So anybody in the chat have any other questions? Let us know. So thanks for the questions so far. In case you're just joining us, I'm interviewing Dave Swartz, creator, all around cool guy. His latest project is on Indiegogo called Confederate Monster, and it's basically the world of Frankenstein meets the Civil War. Basically, two very cool ideas that have come together in the great creative mind of Dave Swartz. So when you're one other question from me, when you're writing a story and you've come up with kind of like your final outline or whatever you end up calling it, is there ever a time when you've been like, oh, I was kind of going for this, but like this idea came up, and like, does that ever happen in a story?
Oh yeah, absolutely, all the time. I would actually say for Confederate Monster, it's happened a couple times, and in particular the ending, because I think what happens oftentimes, especially with a story that is going to last a while and you're going to be invested in, I think oftentimes time changes. Your ideas evolve, and maybe something occurs to you that didn't occur to you in the beginning, but if it occurs to you, it occurs to you for a reason. So I like to take those opportunities to take a step back, really think about it and see, is there something here that I can, utilize to adjust the story and improve it, make it better. And I can say for a fact that I had one of those moments with Confederate Monster where I had one ending. I was pretty happy with it. But then I would say about maybe 2 or 3 months into production into it, I was about 2/3 of the way through the first issue, because the first issue is actually a much longer issue than the other ones. So the first issue is 40 pages long, so it's essentially like 2 issues in one. But for that issue, I was working so long on it. My brain, for whatever reason, I had this idea, this concept came to me while I was working on it, and it totally rewrote the ending. I mean, almost completely threw away what I had done and started over, type of thing. But it makes it, in my opinion, 1,000 times more interesting. So, that does happen from time to time. And I think the reason why I enjoy doing these projects by myself is because I do have that freedom and that flexibility to be able to make quick changes, when I'm in the middle of the project. If I were to be working with somebody else or a team of other creators, and I'm only one part of it, and I have an idea and I want to completely change the ending, that might be a much bigger ask, than if it were just, me. So I think it definitely does happen, and it absolutely has happened for this story.
Cool. Another couple of questions. AL wants to know, AL, a regular member in the alternate comics live streaming world, wants to know if there will be more Confederate Monsters, or does it end after Volume 3?
Oh yeah, no, it continues. So my plan at the moment is to go to 6. So I have a story. The first sort of story is 6 issues long. I wrote a much longer first and last issue. So the first and last issue are both 40 pages. And then the inside issues, the 2, 3, 4, and 5, those are all 20 type. So when I write stories, I really enjoy, as a reader and as a viewer, I really prefer to get a lot of story in the first episode to really pull me in and to drag me into the world, but then really give me a lot of story at the end, like a finale or something like that, to really give me a payoff for my investment, right? So that's kind of how I approach it. And with this story, I had no plan of doing a crowdfunder until I was done. And I guess I was kind of naively thinking that I would be able to finish this book by the end of 2020, and I'm only about halfway through it now. So I decided, though, at the end of last year that I wanted to get it out there faster. My original plan was to do Patreon while I was making it, to try to kind of drum up some support while I was producing the book, and then do a collected edition crowdfunder at the end. And as it goes, I found out after many conversations that most people want a physical book. So I decided it's a smart idea to do a midway through crowdfunder to collect issues 1 through 3, and then in that way we can kind of introduce the story to a lot of people. We can grow the audience, and then when we get to the final, once 4, 5, and 6 are completed, then we have a much larger audience. We got a larger community, to get eyes on the project. And then hopefully we can really, blow the doors off of the collected edition crowdfunder, because I've got lots of ideas that I have been holding back that I could have done for this crowdfunder, but I didn't want to, put all of my tricks out just yet. So I'm super excited for the next one, because there's just, you think my pride or my perks are awesome. Just wait till the collected edition. They're going to just blow your socks off.
Nice. Yeah, we'll get to those perks in just a second, but Trusty had a question about if you came up with the logo yourself.
Yeah. Like I said before, I do the graphic design too. So yeah, I did the logo. I do all the interior, design work as well. And actually that logo took a little while to figure out. I had 2 or 3 different options before I wound up going with this one. But I wanted something that, kind of really had sort of the elegance of the time period, but also that kind of really gritty and kind of almost retro feel to it, because the whole style of the book is supposed to look a bit older, aged, and kind of retro.
Yeah. So what are your? Do you have any favorite perks that you happen to like, or which is probably like asking a parent if you have a favorite child?
So, well, I'll be honest. I have the typical fare. I got the T-shirt, the hat, the sticker, the coaster. But for this campaign, I wanted to do something that you're not going to see everywhere else. So, my thought was, well, I want to do something that is going to be in line with the style of the book. When I was a creative director, I was in charge of branding. So my whole job was to make sure that everything that we did marketing wise for our customers or our clients, it was cohesive, So when you look at the campaign, I really hope that you see, there's a cohesive kind of style to it. There's a cohesive color palette. There's a cohesive font, kind of choice. So, for me, I wanted to make sure that, every aspect of the book had, this kind of polished, clean kind of look to it. So when it came to the perks, I was thinking branding, and I was thinking like style, and the thought came to me, why don't I do these sort of black and white aged prints, something that was maybe indicative of the time period. So that's what I'm offering as a perk option for the campaign. So you can get these aged prints that are going to be done on hand-aged paper that I'm hand-aging myself with coffee and a lighter and all kinds of fun, tools. But then I take the digital image and I add a bit of a textured, weathered sort of effect to it, so that when it prints out, it really does look like it's almost screen printed, which is pretty cool. But one of the options that's part of that set is a wanted poster for the Frankenstein monster. And actually I have a actual prototype that I can show on screen here.
Nice.
This one is sort of my test case. I've been kind of playing around with, it's kind of hard to see, but I've been playing around with like the burnt edges of it, trying to take like a lighter and kind of burn the edges of it a little bit. Kind of tearing the edges a little bit, down there, just give it a real kind of authentic look and feel. So
that was great.
Thanks.
That's cool. Yeah. So, so again, if you're just joining us, or I've put the link in the live chat. It's Dave Swartz at on Indiegogo, Confederate Monster, where the Frankenstein monster meets the Civil War. Great idea, interesting idea. So again, last few minutes here. So any other? So yeah, please, if you haven't backed it already, please head to Indiegogo, Confederate Monster, Dave Swartz. So how can people, besides of Indiegogo, like how can people find you and follow you and all that?
Sure. So my handle on social media is just the Dave Swartz art that you see in your lower corner there. So you can follow me on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. I have a YouTube show called Dose of Dave, where I just do these short little video clips. I also have a podcast with my girlfriend called Higher Consciousness that you can find on all kinds of different podcasting streaming services. We just actually wrapped up season 2 not too long ago, working on season 3 right now. And then I'm also, like I said before, I have Confederate Monster on Patreon as well. So if you go on Patreon and search for Dave Swartz Art, you should be able to find me as well there. On Patreon, if I basically show you the process of making the whole book. So we start from the very first page, and every single page you get to see the rough, the pencil, the ink, the color, and the lettering stage. So it's a very comprehensive behind the scenes look of making the book.
Cool. Yeah, Dave, Steve, another co-worker of mine, says thank you. I wanted to know if this will go to Alterna.
I had no plans at the moment. We'll see. I think for me right now, my biggest goal at the moment, honestly, is I'm really trying to build my own kind of community for myself, between Patreon and crowdfunders. I think that's sort of the way the world is kind of going, kind of away from publishers and larger companies. Not that I don't have any love for Alterna, but I think. For a lot of us creators, personally for me, I love the creative flexibility to be able to do a lot of this stuff myself. So that's kind of the inspiration why I've chosen to go back into self-publishing. But again, I want to try to build my own kind of Dave Swartz art community.
Nice. Any so you're finishing working on this. One last question from me. Any projects down the line besides of Confederate Monster, or at least that you're able to talk about?
Sure. I don't really have a whole lot that I think I can talk about. I know that I do have. I'm not entirely sure when it's going to happen, but I did storyboard a movie for Warner Brothers about a year and a half ago, and I'm hoping that comes out later this year. So we'll see. When it does, I'm gonna let everybody know that I worked on that. But yeah, no, that should be coming. Man, I'm trying to think of anything else I've got going on. I don't think I've got anything major. So no.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, anyway, so I will put the link one more time in the chat. So, again, Dave Swartz Art. If you go to Indiegogo, Confederate Monster is his current thing. He's got about 19 days left or so. So please back it. It's a great project. I've obviously familiar with him once again through Feast or Famine. Great guy, great creator. So again, Dave Swartz Art. Thank you everybody in the chat who's been watching this. Thank you, Dave. I know. So thank you for your spending your valuable time with me. And in case one day when if we actually do get back to cons, I hope we do. If you're at a con in my neck of the woods, we will do lunch. So
Sounds great.
So anyway, again, thank you everybody. Thank you, Dave. Again, Confederate Monster on Indiegogo. Dave Swartz Art. You can find them on the Facebookins and the Twitterins and all that stuff. So previews. So preview for me, Trustee Sidekick will be my next guest on this coming Tuesday evening, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, in my neck of the woods. So again, Dave, thanks again for joining me. Have a great afternoon or evening or morning, whatever you happen to be watching this. So peace out and stay safe and all of that. So talk to you later, everybody.